This forecast is brought to you by me. For information on readings I offer, check out my website at manic.mercurian.net, or you can reach out to me directly at manic.mercurian@gmail.com, and as usual, all of that information is in the description box below. Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, December 19th through Sunday, December 25th, 2022. This week there's really a whole laundry list of planetary ingresses and events going on. So yeah, let's just kind of run down the list here, and then I'll talk more about what is actually going on a more kind of deep level. So definitely some major things. We have Jupiter entering Aries. That's definitely a big deal. It's always a big deal whenever a relatively outer planet changes into a new sign. Because it kind of sets the background tone for what's going on, especially globally or on a societal level. Jupiter entering Aries is a big deal, especially because Jupiter has already entered Aries earlier this year, but then it retrograded back into Pisces. So now it's entering Aries for a sort of final time. So now it's really venturing forward, entering Aries for real this time, you could kind of say. And I think this is exciting because Jupiter has to do with expansion and abundance, and it's entering Aries, which is the sign that has to do with pioneering and venturing forward and initiation. It's very fiery, very energetic. So this is like, it's like, I don't know, it's like lighting a stick of dynamite or something. In a good way. I think this could have to do with a lot of expansion and growth for a lot of us. We also have Sun entering a new sign as well. That's definitely a big deal. Sun is entering Capricorn this week. And of course, it's always a big deal when the sun enters a new sign because that sets the sort of tone, the pace for us, especially on a kind of day to day and week to week sort of level. But I think entering Capricorn, this is a particularly big deal because when the sun does that, we're not only changing, you know, um, seasons like we say in astrology, like Capricorn season, for example, but we're literally changing seasons as well. We're entering winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere. And this is very important astrologically because when we get to that first day of Capricorn, the first day of winter, where the sun is at 0 degrees Capricorn, it's a very powerful day. The solstices are very powerful because they represent transition periods. These are periods where there's a lot of energy that can be accessed and where the sort of portals to the non-physical realms are more open. And the winter solstice in particular is very important because it's the darkest day of the year. So this represents the time where the days kind of sort of bottom out at their shortest length, and then now they start to get longer. So Capricorn is the first sign where the light starts to return back very gradually day by day. And so I think this is very important and very indicative of a lot of Capricorn's symbology and the nature to it. Yes, it may be a kind of pessimistic, cynical sign. It is correlating to a very dark time of year in the northern hemisphere. But I think underneath all that, Capricorn is very, very optimistic in a very kind of deep way. I think they're very private about this. I think you would have to be optimistic in order to make such far-reaching long-term plans and goals like Capricorn does. In other words, Capricorn knows that the light is coming back. It knows that spring will come eventually, and so it's working for this kind of lofty, far-reaching goal or goals all the time. So that's just a little tidbit that I think explains a lot of Capricorn's nature, but we're all kind of experiencing this in our own way as we enter this new phase here. Oh, speaking of Capricorn, it's not just Sun in Capricorn. Sun will be joining Pluto, Mercury, and Venus, and we'll also have the Moon in Capricorn. So Moon and Sun in Capricorn. You know what that means? That means we have a new Moon in Capricorn as well. So, uh, so newly entering Capricorn season, new Moon in Capricorn, plus a whole stellium. 5 planets in Capricorn plus the Moon, so 6 planets if you want to call the Moon a planet. That's a big deal. That's a lot of Capricorn, and I think this is particularly interesting because in recent history, like the last few years, a lot of societal changes have coincided with planets lining up in Capricorn. I'm mostly talking about January 2020 when we had a whole lineup of planets in Capricorn, including some outer planets, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. That was a bigger deal than what this is going to look like, of course, because of those three outer planets lining up in Capricorn at that time. That, of course, kind of coincided with COVID really ramping up and becoming, a situation. And I'm not expecting anything like that to happen this time, but I do think this may be just a sort of echo of that. Our minds may be back on subjects like that. And besides that kind of big issue, it could also just have to do with other issues going on societally, globally, whether it be health issues or definitely a lot having to do with the economy and finances. I think those could be on our minds right now. There may be events there, not only because of this lineup happening in Capricorn, but also because as the planets go through Capricorn, specifically the middle of Capricorn, they will each trine Uranus, which is at 15 degrees Taurus. So there's this huge Earth dynamic. All these planets in Capricorn trining Uranus and Taurus, Earth, 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 Earth. This all has to do with changes involving the structure of society, our rules, regulations, our finances, our economy. Mercury has already trined Uranus last week, but Venus will do so this week, so will the moon, and then later the sun will as well. So they're all channeling Uranus's energy, and right now Uranus is in Taurus, so it's completely changing. I wish I could think of a better word. Completely kind of doing like an overhaul to our whole economy right now. It's an 8-year kind of phase of totally changing our economy, the way we handle resources. So this will be, I think, a time where there's more attention there. There's more action going on there. Okay, really quickly here, just a couple other things. I do think it's very interesting. So we already said Jupiter enters Aries and then Sun enters Capricorn. Right when the Sun enters Capricorn, just after that, it will trine Jupiter. So Sun at 0 degrees Capricorn, Jupiter at 0 degrees Aries. They make a square. I think I said trine. I'm sorry. They will square one another. So that's really interesting. I'm going to hold off to analyze that or interpret that until we get into the day by day forecast, just because we have so much to talk about here. I'm almost done here rambling on. I feel like I'm just rattling off so much information, but almost done, and then we'll get into the day by day forecast. So two more things happening this week. One is Chiron turning direct at 11 degrees Aries. Really briefly about that, I would expect more. I'll give you the good and the bad. Everyone wants to know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? So let's really kind of oversimplify it just for a second here. So, what should I do first? Let's do the bad first. So, bad part of Chiron turning direct at 11 degrees Aries, I would expect more protests going forward, and I guess that's not entirely a bad thing, maybe, but more kind of civil unrest, I guess you could say, and also just maybe more, people demanding to be heard and understood. That's part of what protests are, but also more on just a interpersonal level. And that's not entirely a bad thing either, but there can be a more kind of brutal, destructive aspect of that. On the more positive side, of course, there can be, really productive circumstances and outcomes from this as well. Demanding to be heard, demanding respect, demanding others to understand, etc. That can be very powerful as well. Okay, last thing here, and this one doesn't have to do with any kind of event that's going on this week necessarily, but Mercury's still in pre-shadow. I mentioned that last week when it entered pre-shadow. This just means that we're preparing for Mercury retrograde. There's a lot going on. It's kind of impossible to understand every little thing right now, and that's totally fine. Mercury will turn retrograde in my next forecast for the next week, and that's when we'll have the opportunity to go back and take some time, slow down a little bit, and understand things on a much deeper level. That's really how I view it. I don't view Mercury retrograde as negative, although I do recognize it can be very dysfunctional. I do think it can be, like I said, it can truly be an opportunity if we use it the right way. So, just taking a step back for a moment, because I know that was a lot. I just want to kind of digest that for a second before we do the day by day forecast. I think as a whole, we are entering sort of a transition period, and I do think things will start to intensify a little bit as the planets start to cluster. I think that we got kind of a break the last few weeks. The main kind of dysfunction or action was surrounded by the Gemini full moon we had. That was definitely something that was, I think, pretty wild for everyone, including myself. I learned a lot more about Mars retrograde since it was conjunct the full moon. That was definitely very interesting. Um, and I think that was very dysfunctional for a lot of us. But other than that, things have been pretty normal. And I know there's probably people out there saying, what are you talking about? Things have been so crazy for me. And it really, of course, just depends on your own astrology. But I think as a whole, for everyone, we had kind of a break the last few weeks. Those kind of breaks don't typically last very long before some other kind of intensity sort of rears its head. So I think that's what's happening now. I don't see what we're about to go into being super tumultuous, but I do see it being more intense and affecting each of us more dramatically. For some it may be super easy and powerful and uplifting, and others it may be much darker. It depends on your own astrology. Specifically, where does Capricorn fall in your chart? Is that an energy you're super familiar with? Happy birthday, Capricorns, by the way. This is your time to shine. If you have a bunch of planets in Capricorn, you're gonna feel on fire, with all these planets crossing your planets. But maybe you don't have a lot of Capricorn, or you don't even have any Earth planets. Then this is gonna feel really kind of weird and foreign, and difficult to embrace. It kind of just depends on where this falls in your chart as well. So, okay, with all that being said, I don't want this to get too long, so let's get into the day by day forecast here. So, starting out Monday, December 19th, we have the moon in Scorpio. Sun is still sort of at the end of Sagittarius. It's actually conjunct the galactic center. Quick shout out for that. At 20, I believe it's about 27 degrees Sagittarius where the galactic center is. So this could be a really excellent day for like channeling in higher consciousness, or if you did want to have some kind of metaphysical or spiritual experience, like, I don't know, tapping into past lives or anything like extraterrestrial related, this would be kind of an excellent time to do that. I mean, the sun is not necessarily aspecting a whole lot right now, so this isn't a super powerful day for all that, but sun is conjunct the galactic center, so it is kind of channeling in that sort of energy. Moon is almost at the last part of its kind of cycle here. It would be a waning crescent at this point, so losing light, kind of wrapping things up, winding down. It's becoming, it's kind of entering a less active part of the lunar cycle. So, really, as a whole, this looks like a more kind of relaxed Monday, or maybe more focused, I guess would be a better word. Um, the sun is in Sagittarius, but there are no other planets in Sagittarius, and right now there aren't even any other planets in fire signs at all. So I really don't think this would feel like Sagittarius season so much. You're not going to have a lot of those like jolly, happy, let's just explore type of vibes. I think really this chart is dominated by Capricorn and Scorpio. Mercury and Venus in Capricorn specifically, along with Pluto, and then Moon in Scorpio. So these are much more kind of serious energies. I think these two signs are more serious than any other zodiac sign. Very focused, very much focused on their ambitions, their goals, their plans. So that's the kind of vibe for Monday. So I mean, I guess that being said, it's not. It's maybe a very excellent kind of vibe for Monday. Maybe, I don't know, taking things seriously, planning out your week ahead. Um, it's just not the kind of day for. It's not like the happiest start to the week. You know what I'm saying? It's more serious and productive. Let's get some work done type of vibe. We do have two aspects happening, and they both involve Chiron, which I think is pretty interesting, especially considering Chiron is about to turn direct this week. Both Venus and Mars are aspecting Chiron, which is kind of weird. So Venus is at 11 degrees Capricorn, squaring Chiron, and then Mars will be at 11 degrees Gemini, sextiling Chiron. Um, both of these I'm kind of wary about because Venus is benefic, but it's making a harsh aspect to Chiron. and then Mars is making a more harmonious aspect, but it's a malefic. It makes things more kind of challenging. And Chiron in Aries, I just pictured like a tinderbox kind of. I think that's an excellent image for Chiron in Aries. Yeah, I feel like I'm channeling right now because that kind of just popped into my head out of nowhere. But that is the perfect metaphor. I feel like a tinderbox could be used in a productive way. Let's like make a fire, but I think it's just so flammable that it can be very difficult to use it in a harmonious, um, pleasant, stable type of way. By its very nature, it's so flammable, metaphorically speaking, that it's almost explosive. So when you get some planets aspecting it, kind of triggering it, it's almost kind of lighting the what do they call like the string that comes? It's not a string, but it comes from a bomb. I'm totally spacing what that's called, but it's almost like lighting off like a trigger for a bomb or something, or lighting a tinderbox. These aspects are. That's my take on it. But okay, so to put it in more kind of mundane or layman's terms, um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Chiron and Aries represents people wanting to be heard, wanting to be understood, people being very aware of their past traumas, insecurities, wrongs that may have been committed, perceived wrongs, and I think it's excellent to bring that up and to want to deal with it and integrate it, and it's excellent to want to be heard and understood. But I'm just wary because, like I said, it's just this dynamic to me is it has a lot of potential. It has a lot of potential for good, but there's a lot of potential for it to just kind of blow up as well. People just screaming to be understood, and they're demanding empathy, but they're not understanding. They're not being empathetic. I think you have to kind of meet others halfway if you're demanding understanding, and that's just not something that Chiron and Aries I think would have us easily do. So this looks kind of difficult. People may be a little bit touchy, easily offended, sensitive with this aspect. So Monday, honestly, as a whole, it looks, I don't know, it looks like people may be very serious, very taking themselves very seriously. There's not a lot of air planets. The only planets we do have in air signs are malefics, Saturn and Mars. So there's no kind of carefree energy. Despite Sun and Sagittarius, it's kind of a very rigid type of day. To be totally honest, I think. Going forward to Tuesday, December 20th, Moon is still in Scorpio. It's still kind of wrapping up its cycle, still losing light. And so it's almost like a dark moon, they call it. So this can be literally like having to do with dark themes, lacking that moon's energy. So things are could have to do more with like insecurities or darkness. But on the other hand, it could also has to just do with more kind of non-physical matters when the moon gets to this point. Especially with moon in Scorpio. Scorpio naturally has to do with sort of non-physical things as well, like emotions, like psychic abilities, spiritual kind of concepts as well. So that's kind of the where the focus is going. On the other hand, though, we still have this Capricorn and Scorpio dominance. So they're also very ambitious signs as well. So this could be still very like productive type of vibe or mentality going into Tuesday. Tuesday we do have Jupiter entering Aries, so that's probably the biggest event of the week, really. And again, like I said before, to me, this is exciting. This is expansion. This looks really fun. Jupiter is not technically in domicile or exaltation or anything like that in Aries, but in my mind, it's very strong. I mean, having the planet of expansion in Aries, which is, to me, Aries is a very expansive sign. It's all about starting things, beginning things, intensifying what we've already began. You know what I mean? And it's fire. We're lighting Jupiter on fire, kind of putting it in Aries. So yeah. Also, since Jupiter has a lot to do with where we are going on a societal level, societal trends and events, etc. Putting that in Aries means we may be entering a new chapter in those areas as well. It also means that we may be very individualistic. societally. I think we already are, but this may even kind of exacerbate and further those trends that may already be there. It's going to be really wild later next year when Jupiter crosses over Chiron. I always have the same kind of wary feeling with anything involving Chiron and Aries, honestly. But adding Jupiter to that's going to be really kind of wild and potentially scary, but we'll see about that. But yeah, I am excited for Jupiter in Aries. In case you don't know, Jupiter spends about a year in each sign that it goes through. So so yeah, you can look forward to Jupiter being in Aries roughly a year. Um, Expansion, start of a new kind of chapter. I always want to say new age, but I mean this in itself is not starting a new age, but it is bringing us closer to a trend that I see happening that will really start going about halfway through the decade, where all the outer planets are going to start lining up in the yang signs, in air and fire signs. So Jupiter in Aries, it's kind of ahead of its time right now, I think you could say. Um, in other words, what's going to happen next year will be a little kind of sneak peek of what something that's more to come later, especially starting about halfway through 2025. Um, that would just be a lot more activity going on a societal level, new things really being implemented. I could talk more about that in a later video. I actually talk a lot about that in the first video I ever posted. If you want to go way back, probably not. But yeah, that's definitely the main event for Tuesday. Other than that, to be totally honest, Tuesday's more just a continuation of Monday. We still have the moon in Scorpio, so it's a lot of the same type of vibes. Okay, going forward to Wednesday, December 21st. Today we have the solstice, winter solstice in the northern hemisphere and summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. Happy birthday, Capricorns. That means it's also Capricorn season starting. Um, Looks like late afternoon Eastern Standard Time, maybe different where you are. But yeah, we are ditching a lot of these Sagittarian vibes. It's kind of interesting because not long after not long after Moon enters Sagittarius, Sun leaves Sagittarius. So it's almost like a relay race. Like Moon continues some of these Sagittarian vibes, keeping things a little bit lighthearted and upbeat. I do like this because it brings a little bit of a mix, a little bit of a balance. We're already starting to see the beginning of this Capricorn stellium with Pluto, Mercury, Venus, and then now Sun in Capricorn. So that's definitely a stellium right there. A lot of Capricorn energy. Capricorn is so hardworking, productive, ambitious, focused on the future, goal oriented. Um, it's probably the best sign for all that, for long term planning and for being very practical, for not letting emotion cloud your judgment. Capricorn is very kind of stoic and objective, I guess you could say. So all that energy is really great, but it can be very serious. We can feel like we're under a lot of pressure with strong Capricorn energy, and things can feel very dry. I think it can be a difficult energy for a lot of us to experience. So that's why I say I think Moon in Sagittarius is kind of nice for breaking us into this. It's continuing some of these sort of jolly vibes, especially before some major holidays in a lot of areas. Continuing a little bit of that happiness. Let's enjoy the moment as well. Let's definitely plan on the future and be serious and all that, but also let's balance it with enjoying the moment as well and maybe indulging a little bit. Okay, and yeah, and one last thing about that, I do think it's interesting. Sun and Moon both enter a new sign on Wednesday. Kind of weird. Anyway, so Wednesday we also have, as soon as the Sun enters Capricorn, it makes that square that I talked about. Sun at 0 degrees Capricorn, squaring Jupiter at 0 degrees Aries. This is always interesting. I always say it's very interesting whenever planets aspect each other, either at the very last or the first degree of a sign or signs. In this case, Sun and Jupiter are squaring each other at the first degree of each of their signs. Capricorn Aries squares are very tense. I talked about this recently because they both have to do with energies that are initiating, that are starting something new. So they have a lot in common in that way, but both are starting very different things. We already talked about Jupiter and Aries being this very expansive, kind of optimistic energy, this very fiery energy, but that's clashing with the Sun in Capricorn, which is much more serious and dry. Let's plan things. Let's be serious. Let's be objective. Versus Jupiter in Aries, let's be just spirited and act in the moment, act from our heart. Sun in Capricorn is more saying let's act from the mind and be, um, it's a little bit more rigid, or I don't know what other word to describe it. So, um, another thing though, this represents change. Not only because this aspect is happening in cardinal signs, which have to do with initiation, pushing something forward, starting something new, but also square aspects have to do with change as well. This clash it's symbolizing some kind of new beginning. So this may be a new beginning for us individually, depending on where this square is happening in our charts. But I think even more than that, this is representing a change societally. So new trends, also new actions taken by governments and large organizations, large companies, things of that nature. Especially because Capricorn has to do with hierarchies, um, authority figures, and also whoever's in charge. So not just authority figures, but also the companies, the governments, etc. Um, all that being represented by Sun and Capricorn, squaring Jupiter and Aries, initiation, starting something new. I can't really speculate on what the nature of that new initiation would be. It would be very personal to whoever's starting it, because these are very independent energies. The energies of like entrepreneurs, the energies of I don't know. They're very individualistic. So I think it really depends on the person or the organization. Okay, other than that, yeah, no, I think I covered it. Yeah, Wednesday is definitely a shift from the start of the week. I think Wednesday we can experience that there is some kind of new change that's kind of emerging, some kind of new beginning that's about to happen. Going forward to Thursday, December 22nd, Moon continues through Sagittarius. It's getting very close now to the Sun, so it pretty much won't be visible at all at this point. It's definitely a very dark moon. So again, this is kind of non-physical in nature. This is actually the most spiritual part of the lunar cycle, when the moon is just right before the sun, because it's the very end of the lunar cycle. So this has parallels to the 12th house or to Pisces. It's the end of a cycle. The end of a cycle is kind of like death, or right before death. We have a life flash before our eyes, or I don't know. There's this connection to the non-physical realm, sort of at the end of a cycle. Um, so yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Definitely nothing intense, but that is kind of going on. So this would be great for anything spiritual or metaphysical in nature. It could also be really great for just resting. Even though yes, Moon is in Sagittarius, which is a very active sign, but again, it's dark. We're not seeing it. There's no light there from the moon. So um, it is more of a like less active energy, more non-physical in nature. Okay, other than that, on Thursday we do have Venus trining Uranus. So this is what I was talking about. As the planets cross through the middle of Capricorn, they'll each have a conversation with Uranus. They'll each channel Uranus's energies, and like I talked about in the intro, Uranus is in an 8-year transit in Taurus, where it is uh, indicating complete changes to our whole financial and economic systems. And this isn't a gradual change that happens steadily over that 8 years. It's something that kind of like shifts. Certain days we will really see this ramp up, and then it'll kind of level off, and then it'll be really active again. So as these inner planets trine Uranus, these are moments where I would speculate that we would see a lot more activity with these changes to our not just our finances and our economies, but also rules, regulations, the structure of our lives, especially societally. All that is likely to change. I think this is all especially true with Venus, because Venus has a lot to do with our finances, our abundance as well. So on Thursday, with Venus trining Uranus, I could see a lot of unpredictability with resources, stock markets, high highs, low lows, new resources being valued that weren't being valued before, or resources that were valued before are no longer valued. There's a lot kind of changing there, and it's very unpredictable in nature. With Uranus, you can always expect the unexpected. It's just hard to know kind of exactly how that will turn out. Let's go forward here. So for Friday, December 23rd, we have more. There's so much going on this week. I can't even process it almost. But okay, I've got three kind of big bullet points all for Friday here. So um, okay, so first on Friday, Moon will. Well, I guess okay. Let's go in chronological order. So first on Friday, Chiron will turn direct at 11 degrees Aries. Chiron's very slow. Its orbit is beyond Saturn and before Uranus. So in other words, for those who are astrologically astute, I'm assuming most of you are astrologically astute if you're watching my channel, but Chiron is slower than Saturn but faster than Uranus. It's a slow little guy. So so Chiron's turning direct, and it will stay direct for several months now. And excuse me. And again, when planets turn direct, it's like they're coming back online. It's like they're their normal selves again. They're functioning in a more direct, linear, tangible kind of way. Versus, or as opposed to when they're retrograde, they're more kind of offline. They're almost asleep, or they're dreaming, kind of. You could kind of put it that way. So, with Chiron and Aries, we had kind of a break from Chiron and Aries for the last few months, and I view that as a kind of good thing. Call me biased. I think we're all biased, but to me, Chiron and Aries is dysfunctional at best. I'm just gonna say that. So Chiron and Aries turning direct. Like I said, the plus side of this moving forward would be maybe we demand to be understood. We demand rights. That can be very uplifting, very necessary. I definitely don't want to understate the benefits and the necessity of a lot of that. And again, this is very much on a personal level as well as collectively different groups demanding justice, demanding to be heard, correcting the wrongs of the past. All of that really great. But the reason why I'm a little bit uneasy about this is because, again, like I've said before, Chiron and Aries I think has a lot to do with individuals or maybe groups demanding justice, demanding to be heard, demanding empathy, but demanding it sometimes in such a belligerent way that they create more trauma or more misunderstandings, more hurt, or sometimes if they demand it so aggressively, they can cause further destruction and pain, and they may not then get what they sought after in the first place because of that approach. It can be risky or troublesome to demand such understanding and empathy when you are not being understanding or empathetic yourself to who you are speaking to. Does that make sense? That's my take on it, but that's what I would see moving forward here with Chiron direct. So more protests, more civil unrest, I would think, and I think this is going to be especially true this next couple weeks, this week and next week specifically, because not only is Chiron direct, but all these planets in Capricorn are squaring Chiron as well at the same time that Chiron is moving direct. So there's this top-down, Aries more has to do with the individual. So in other words, Chiron and Aries has more to do with the individual or with smaller groups who may have less rights, versus all these planets in Capricorn are more in line with whoever's already in charge, the ruler, the president, the emperor, the governments, the big businesses, whoever it is, and this is on an individual level as well. Whoever's the authority figure or authority figures in your life, they are relatively strong right now, I would say, with all these planets in Capricorn, but they're clashing up against the individual, the little guy, the underdog, who is demanding respect, demanding to be heard, who may be a little bit belligerent or confident. I almost said cocky. I want to be very careful not to place any judgment as best I can. But yeah, the underdog is feeling very fierce, feeling very fiery. It's with this chart, I don't think the odds are necessarily in its favor right now because there's this huge cluster in Capricorn. Again, it's supporting the status quo, it's supporting structure, rules. Whoever's been in charge, all these planets in Capricorn are supporting them continuing to be in charge at least the next couple weeks, just at the very least. But yeah, it's very tense. I think Capricorn Aries squares, I think, are some of the most tense, and it's like gridlock. Both are very fierce, both are very warrior-like at times in very different ways. But I think they very much clash together, Capricorn and Aries in general. Okay, that was a lot, but that's my take on Chiron turning direct. Okay, and I've barely even begun to talk about Friday. So right after that, Moon leaves Sagittarius and enters Capricorn, and then immediately after it enters Capricorn, we have a Moon Sun conjunction at 1 degrees Capricorn. So in other words, that's a Capricorn new moon at 1 degree. And it looks like if you want to get technical, it'll happen in the early morning Eastern Standard Time. So this is really kickstarting Capricorn season even more. If you didn't already experience this kind of overabundance of Capricorn energy, you should definitely experience it now. After December 23rd, it's, again, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, Moon, and Sun all in Capricorn. Everything's about Capricorn right now. If you are Capricorn, if you have major placements in Capricorn, or even if you don't, whatever placements you have in Capricorn, those are going to be lit up right now. That's where the activity is going to be. That's where the new changes are going to be. That's where the energy, the focus, the action, all will be. And of course, if you have people in your life that have strong Capricorn placements, the spotlight's going to be on them. It's all about them right now. This is their time to shine. This is their time to enter a new phase, a new cycle of some sort. Um, yeah, and I think I kind of brushed over this, but even if you or someone has just one placement in Capricorn, that's look there, because that's, I guarantee you that's where you're gonna see something going on. You can look to the specific planets involved to see more details on that. Um, okay, so, but yeah, again, the new moon in Capricorn. Whenever typically we get one new moon per sign per month, if that makes sense, or per year, and sometimes we get two, like a blue moon. But with this new moon in Capricorn, new moons really show a new beginning. So not only is Sun entering Capricorn, starting Capricorn season, but then we get this new moon in Capricorn, showing that it's really the beginning. It's like a 1-2 punch. Does that make sense? I'm kind of struggling to explain this, but it's sort of like two different beginnings of Capricorn. So now that we've had both pretty close together in the same week, it doesn't get much more Capricornian than that. Very much forward thinking. Let's plan things. Let's be serious. This could be to the detriment of the themes represented by the opposite sign. So Cancer, having to do with emotion, is kind of put on the back burner right now. Those who are very emotional in nature may feel kind of estranged, may feel not themselves. We may have to sacrifice our immediate comforts and emotion, represented by Cancer, in order to honor the far future, the outcome farther down the road, represented by Capricorn. Also, a different way of looking at this would be, we may have to sacrifice our personal emotions and our feelings, not just in the short term, but also, individually, in order to honor tradition, society, community, rules, regulations. Capricorn more has to do with falling in line with a higher organization of some sort, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the focus. It's definitely not one of the most fun energies, but it's very much necessary, especially for, again, achieving something very large, achieving something that may take a lot of time. And Capricorn shows us that that's what's truly the most rewarding in the end, is something that may not be fun to work toward in the moment, day by day, but it's something that you make sacrifices for, and then later on down the road, once you do achieve this vision, that's what's going to give you really long lasting appreciation, gratitude, um, satisfaction, etc. So, is it the most fun energy? No, but this is very powerful. This is maybe more important than fun or even pleasure in the moment. Um, okay, I feel so weird, like I'm giving some kind of lecture. I guess that is what I'm doing. So okay, all that being said, Friday looks kind of serious. It doesn't look like a typical Friday, like how a Friday's supposed to be. I know we're gearing up for, Christmas, a lot of us, and it's it's not the most fun kind of jolly energy. Typically, right now we would have at least something in Sagittarius, and we really don't right now. It's more kind of more serious, more practical in nature. Okay, and then Saturday, December 24th, Moon continues through Capricorn. Um, you can see this whole conglomerate of, this Capricorn stellium happening. On Saturday, Moon will cross over both Venus and Mercury. Um, in other words, like Venus, Moon, and Mercury are almost conjunct pretty much. They're within only 4 degrees from each other, about midday Eastern Standard Time. And they're all kind of loosely within range of this trine to Uranus. So this is another day that you could expect a lot of really massive and sudden, unpredicted changes to our economy, finances, mostly that area, but also rules, regulations, government activities, things of that nature. A lot of this could be very visible, very tangible. A lot of it could also be sort of behind the scenes because Uranus is retrograde still. So there are, in other words, like our whole economy and finances may be massively changing, and some of us may be aware of that right now. And we may be aware of some events, but a lot of it is going on behind the scenes as well. That's what I would speculate, as usual, I guess. But this is a particularly potent time for a lot of these very massive changes that are happening to our society. A lot of historical events going on right now. Also, Saturday we do have one uh, exact aspect, let us say, because we have a lot of not exact aspects. But Mercury will sextile Neptune. This is kind of a funky one. Mercury at 22 degrees Capricorn, sextiling Neptune at 22 degrees Pisces. Um, this is so weird. I feel like, I don't know, Capricorn Pisces sextiles are so interesting because I think as signs they seem very different from one another. But the sextile aspect typically, it brings together two energies which are very different in nature, but they also are still similar enough to blend together very easily. And typically, when you combine Capricorn and Pisces, it gets very like worldly. There's a lot of wisdom there, if that makes sense. And it can get actually very stoic as well. I think a lot of people don't realize Pisces does have a very detached side to it. And on the flip side, Capricorn does have a very, I don't even know the word for it, like a very sensitive side. I wouldn't say emotional. Sensitive? Like melancholy? I'm not sure even how to describe what I'm saying. But Capricorn has a deep feeling side, let us say. Um, So there is definitely a very strong connection between Pisces and Capricorn, although it may not seem like it. So that's kind of the context for this. Specifically with these planets, Mercury's in Capricorn, so it's showing the mentality, the intellect, the details are Capricorn. Practical. Let's get serious. Let's be planning for the future. But now we're channeling in this kind of dreamy, fantastical, psychic, spiritual Neptune and Pisces energy. So I think this could be really a really great day for getting some kind of insight or vision, using your imagination or using something psychic or spiritual in nature in order to come up with maybe some detailed goals or to implement your goals maybe. Does that make sense? It's the combination of the intuition and emotion with this very kind of deadpan, serious, forward-thinking energy. So So like let's think about the future, let's plan, let's be serious, but in a way which channels in this like kind of spiritual, this dream, this vision. Does that make sense? So it is a kind of weird, kind of funky one, but it could be a really great day for accessing some kind of wisdom, um, some kind of very far-reaching vision onto a possible outcome that you may seek to create. Okay. Lastly, going forward to Sunday, December 25th, Moon enters Aquarius, so that is kind of a big shift. We still have a stellium in Capricorn. I always hesitate because I know there's this huge debate over whether three or four planets in astrology qualifies as a stellium. I personally feel like it's a pretty pointless argument, but anyway, I digress. It's kind of irrelevant because we do have four planets still in Capricorn. That's definitely a stellium: Pluto, Mercury, Venus, and Sun. So the focus is still very much there, on these changes that are happening societally, on more individually, thinking about goals and the future and getting serious, managing our resources, being very practical, etc., etc., etc. All this like Capricorn kind of stuff. All the focus is very much still there, but the moon has moved on. So it shows that emotionally we have kind of moved on. We're still being very serious. Moon is sandwiched between Pluto and Saturn, and it's in Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn, like Capricorn. So it's still very kind of serious and forward thinking. Still thinking about traditions, obligations to community, future kind of goals, plans. All of that is still applicable with all of these energies, including Moon in Aquarius. The difference, though, in my opinion, is that Aquarius, it's an air sign, so it's lighter. There's more room to move around and be spunky, to be spontaneous, to be a little quirky or kind of weird. Let's try something new, and that's where this dichotomy of Aquarius comes in. We are honoring tradition, we're very mindful of our communal obligations, things of that nature, but at the same time, we have the option to, maybe we can deviate from those. We have the choice. And I'm making it sound like a big deal. It's not a big deal, it's just the moon here. Moon travels so fast, it's not a huge commitment or planetary lineup or anything like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the focus is still very goal oriented and on tradition and structure and all that, but in a more kind of, in a slightly looser way now. We're desiring some kind of quirkiness. I actually kind of like this for the holiday. For those of you who do celebrate Christmas, um, I think this can be fun because yes, Christmas does happen in Capricorn. It is a Capricornian holiday, which originally I think had to do with the light coming back, kind of like I talked about in the intro. The pagan roots more have to do with the light returning and all that, and that's Capricorn. That's focusing on ushering in a new year, manifesting what will come later in spring and Aries and all that, and Easter. But for us now, it's a family kind of get together of some sort. So putting it in those kind of more mundane modern terms, all this abundance of Capricorn, I think, can be a downer. Honestly, we want to celebrate, we want to have fun. So bringing in that little bit of quirkiness and weirdness from Moon and Aquarius, I think, can be fun. That's just my personal opinion, but I think that could kind of liven things up just a tiny bit. Aquarius can still be very serious, detached, but it also has that capacity to be a little bit wild or to bring in just a teeny bit of belligerence that might make things a tiny bit fun. um, okay, that's what I have for you for this week. That was a lot, and this forecast is longer than it is usually, but we covered a lot during that week. I feel like this forecast was particularly dense, so I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope I didn't forget anything. I don't think I did, but yeah, there's a lot of changes going on this week and a lot of changes to come. It's only going to get more interesting from here on out. Next week we do have Mercury turning retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn, and it will be conjunct Venus as it turns retrograde, which I think is kind of interesting. I believe that's correct. We also have a first quarter moon at 8 degrees Aries, so again, a clash between Sun and Capricorn with Moon in Aries. Aries Capricorn squares are so tense. But they can also be that much more useful for initiation. Combining the sporadicness of Aries, the impulsiveness, the urge to start something new, with the more decisive, more strategic Capricornian energy. So I think it could be very difficult to balance both of these, but if it's done correctly, this kind of gives you the best shot of initiating something in a kind of a perfect way, in a way that's very headstrong and cocky because of Aries, but also aware of the far future and composed like Capricorn. Anyway, I think that's enough of me kind of rambling on, but I hope this forecast comes to you in a helpful way, and I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you next week.